Hi, and welcome to episode 23 of Alice Chen's podcast. And we are with Alice Chen today talking about hot off the press news.
Yes, so a lot of people obviously were here when the news broke out last week regarding Zillow and MRED. And then Compass's name was also, in the mix, of course.
Yeah.
And it was last Tuesday evening when MRED said, if Zillow, you don't fix or correct what your policy is, your stance, we're going to shut off the feed as of 11:59 on Tuesday. Yeah.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So it's interesting because our video guys, Visual Filmworks, actually videoed an event last week, which was like literally 24 hours or 48 hours after the news broke.
Yes.
That Zillow had done. Zillow and MRED got into their
fight.
Their drama,
their little,
right?
Match. Yeah.
So we had a panel of real estate agents on Real Producers in Chicago. Mm-hmm. It was Matt Laracy, Greg Pekorski, and Grace. How do you pronounce her last name?
Yeah.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So with Compass. And it was just one of those moments, and Tommy Choi was the moderator.
Yeah.
So it was one of those moments where you could hear a pin drop in the room.
Oh, absolutely.
You know?
I bet. Yeah.
And I wish you were on the panel.
I know. Sorry. I couldn't make it. Yeah.
Because I felt like, no offense to Grace, but she was giving a little extra grace to the others that were on there. I wanted to see some clashing a little bit.
She's very classy.
Yeah.
What can you do?
Yeah.
So, I don't know. What have you heard, Bill? Or what is your whole take? And then we'll kind of get into that.
So the theme that I walked out of that event with was Matt Laracy, who's a Chicago agent, was talking about it's not good to have an empire.
Big companies, you're all pumping up saying like, oh, this is great. Now we're all just going to be Compass, because I didn't elect Emperor Refkin as my savior, as everybody else has. And when you see what's happening, especially when I see the social media posts that Compass, Jameson, Coldwell, Central 1, you guys are all in a room together, and you all say, hey, now who's going to win on this? We're going to have private exclusives, and only our agents are going to have access to those private exclusives, and then we'll go in the open market.
And so he feels like that some of the bigger corporate entities are actually creating this monopoly to a degree when it comes to the PLN and also the I guess one of the things he said was, I'm seeing a lot of people say, come here, not what's best for the client. Like, come to this site versus like something that's best for the actual consumer.
The actual consumer, yeah. So I think that was, full transparency, that was a part of the marketing plan as far as like when we found out that all of this was coming down the pipe, that this was our plan to kind of get the word out that Zillow is, at the end of the day, Zillow is a website, okay? They are not a brokerage, okay? They try to be, actually. They try to get agents to join, but they are not a licensed brokerage in the state of Illinois. However, in order for them to receive the syndicated listings from MRED, they have to sign a contract with MRED, okay? A licensing contract, essentially. And in that contract, it basically says, I don't know what the contract actually says, but I assume it says what Zillow is supposed to do, what they shouldn't do in order to receive the syndicated listings, right? Okay. So at the end of the day, the listings are gained, and I hope Matt would agree with this. The agents themselves win the business and they earn the business in the listings, right? And so it's upsetting and it's sad and frustrating to see when the agents are the ones who get the business, who win the business, right? And then that information then is being sold to a third-party website, okay? And then, I'm sure he can agree, Zillow, since it's a website, okay, it had to create and monetize the data, right?
Right.
So it took the data that we earned, private data of our clients, right? And then decided to put it on their website to lure buyers, okay, and prospects. And then when the buyers and prospects call on those listings, it never goes to the listing agent. So the argument could be that that's definitely not in the buyer's or in the seller's interest either. Well, it's also not in the buyer's interest because the agent that they're talking to chances are knows nothing about the property.
Right.
And so Zillow monetized all this, right? And then that's how they make their revenue, a lot of it actually. And so if they don't have the listings, that is our stance. That's Compass's stance. That's MRED's stance. If they don't have the listings that they didn't actually win, all right, and those are not their clients, then they don't have the power, right? And so it's really, the point was to put the power back into the agent's hands, the agents who gained the business to begin with. Mm-hmm. To me, it makes a lot of sense. I could definitely see why from an independent company standpoint that it's not fair, it's not right, it's a monopoly. You guys are just trying to double end deals, which is what I hear on the street a lot. You know,
Right,
you're trying to double dip, you're trying to keep things in house, you're trying to. At the end of the day, this was not. I mean, I know what people think, but this was not what this was about. You know, it was about keeping our data and preserving our data and our clients', privacy and information, and not having it sold anymore.
Yeah.
And basically letting Zillow know that they don't call the shots. Sorry.
Right. Right.
I just wanted to add one more thing. So on Friday, when the judge ordered MRED to kind of restore the flow of listings, right, the syndication, that was all that was said in the headlines. So nobody really reads all the articles and like digs in deep, except for me. What was not said in the headlines was that the judge also told Zillow, hey, knock it off, right? You can't treat a brokerage specifically any differently if their sellers and that brokerage chooses to market their properties beforehand, right? Or differently, right? So you can't punish them. And so the judge basically told them both to knock it off, So that was honestly a win. It wasn't a win just for Zillow. It was actually honestly a win for MRED, for Compass International Holdings.
Yeah.
Because that was the whole point. That was the whole point of MRED saying that they were going to cut off the syndication, is to invoke and force Zillow to behave and not cherry pick,
Gotcha.
like what they were going to do.
Question, and I'll play a little devil's advocate as we're going through this. Not that I agree or don't agree
And
or
I'm
whatever.
sure Matt would if he was here. So
Yeah, so it's just one of those things where I think you just want to look at the big picture. As when you have somebody that's debating that, they would say, okay, well, does the consumer have full access to all the listings?
Yes.
Okay.
So if a consumer is working with an agent, let's clarify. If a consumer is working with an agent, okay, they should have access to all the listings. Yes. By virtue of that agent should have access to the PLN, of course, private listing network in the MLS, and they should be giving them direct access either through the MLS as a search or something like Zenlist, which then has the PLN listings. I know Compass agents, we have the Compass platform. So as long as, again, we share that with our clients, and honestly, they don't even, the little unknown fact is that you don't even have to be a Compass agent or a Compass client to sign up to have access to the private exclusive listings on Compass. You just sign up. You just say, okay, I want access. I want to see what's on here. And that's it.
Yeah.
There's no, not a lot of like pre-qualification. It's not like you have to, give a form of your ID or anything like that. I mean, it's just, I want the information. Can I sign up? Yes. Okay.
Right. Is there, if I was a consumer just starting out, not having an agent or anything, where would I be able to get access
That
to?
would be hard. Yeah. So that would be hard. I think that's part of the conundrum too. And the argument is, most of the people who are searching on Zillow and third-party portals are just that, searching. They're not necessarily, are they serious? No. I would say the vast majority of the people that are looking are just curious. They're just looking.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if that qualifies. So how do we discern between people that are just nosy, right? And then people who are actual clients, right? And people who are serious about transacting.
Right.
Yeah. So, Zillow always said that, like, they've always said, oh, you're missing on this many millions of views, right? Like this many millions of hits, right? And buyers looking. Well, in the entire US, only a certain number of transactions happened, even in the last year. So not all of those people who are looking, not even, it's a fraction, are actual serious buyers. So it's, again, they're using marketing strategies to try to sell, like, as to why people should go on their website.
Right.
You know?
Right. Yeah. And the one thing I would say, I guess the root of the problem with the drama was the PLN, right?
Yes,
that
I agree.
The
yes.
kind of root of it?
Yeah. So the PLN originally was created, I believe, so that agents would have a place to put their what we used to call pocket listings. Mm-hmm. So back in the day, even before the MLS was really super robust, you signed paperwork and then you brought it back to the office and you told everybody in the office at the meeting, hey, I have a pocket listing, right?
Yeah.
Do you have a buyer, right? Maybe we can make a match.
Right.
And that's all it went. It didn't go any further than that. Once the PLN got set up, then you could put it in there. And then other buyer agents could see it, right? Mm-hmm. Not necessarily from your office. It opened it up to the entire MLS, right? So the reason why this whole, I guess, battle started is because Zillow, I don't believe Zillow ever truly had access to the PLN listings. Mm-hmm. They only had access to the listings once they were activated, and then they syndicated. And so they didn't like the fact that there was separate data that they didn't have access to.
Right.
You know?
Right.
And to me, it's not their data to have. It's the agents and the sellers. And, you know, buyers, if they're working with somebody and they want access to it, obviously they should have access to it.
Right.
So it's created this kind of mess. I mean, it's created a huge issue.
Well, you said it before we got on too, that Zillow isn't in the world of real estate. It's a website.
It's not.
Right? So
it's not in the, and so it's not beholden.
It just got too big. It grew too fast. It was like Mr. Potter.
Exactly. It just kind of just like evolved over
Right.
time too, very quickly. And so because it's important to know that because they're not licensed and because they're not an actual agent, they're not a member of the MLS, right? So they're not a licensed agency or brokerage. They are not beholden to the same, this is the most important part. They're not beholden to the same fiduciary duties and responsibilities that we are as agents, okay? So when we sign a contract with a buyer or a seller, we are beholden to fiduciary responsibilities. We have to also keep their information, the client's information, everything confidential, okay? And confidentiality lasts forever, beyond the sale, okay? Zillow, though, hasn't signed any of those things. So they are not held accountable in the same way that an agent, a brokerage is, if that makes sense. And so, again, it's like they're getting the benefits and then they're reaping revenue out of the benefits, but they aren't beholden to any contractual items.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah. It's basically, so I'm trying to think of this as Zillow was like maybe the Amazon of real estate.
I think that's fair. Yeah.
You can do window shopping.
Yeah.
So
you just look and you just,
But it took off to the point where if you don't have the fiduciary, stance, then now they're taking the real estate agents, and real estate agents are now becoming dependent on that because they don't have faith in their own. I say that, and like a lot of big agents out there use Zillow. Like Greg Pekorski was one of those that used it, and he has his own arguments there too. But it's one of those things where I think the other argument would be like, okay, so you guys are dependent on this. Like, why don't you just, drop everything and say, look, we don't need Zillow. Like everything, it's kind of back to the level playing field of, creating your brand and creating your,
creating your own business. So I have a confession. So I was on Zillow. So I paid for Zillow for a while. It's a long time ago. I would say I was on Zillow for a good 5 years. 5
Were
or 6
you
years.
on the flex? Because there's different levels.
So it was before the Flex program came out. So it was just like, I don't know if it was like Zillow Premier or Zillow. It was basically pay to play, right?
Yeah.
So you paid like a monthly, it was very expensive, even back then. You paid a
right.
monthly, huge monthly fee. And then they would give you leads, right? From a zip code, I think.
Yeah, right.
That's when I was a part of Zillow. Okay. And then after a while, I started to realize that they were selling me back my own damn leads. Because I would get the lead and I would be like, that name looks so familiar. And then I would look it up in my database and I'd be like, son of a... it's already in there, okay?
That's kind words.
Yeah, I used different words, but
Yeah.
and so then I was like, what am I doing? What? Okay, I already paid for the lead once, probably
Yeah.
either in time or money, and then I paid for it again with Zillow, and then now I'm paying for it again. Like this doesn't make any sense. So then it was probably a decade ago. Yeah, it was a decade ago where I said, that's it, I'm done. So cold turkey, I canceled.
Was that hard for you?
It wasn't. I think it was more mental.
Yeah.
I think it was more mental, but I think it was like also 2 weeks of like receiving leads that like almost every single one was somebody I already had in my database.
Yeah.
And I was like, no more.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I just cut it off about 10 years ago. Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well,
So
interesting.
anyways, yeah, I haven't looked back.
Yeah. So we put out some terms that people like layman's people would be like,
What does that mean?
Yeah. PLN is private listing.
Private
network.
listing network. So that is like the equivalent of pocket listing. So when you sign a listing, it's not active yet. You might not see it on any of the websites, really. You definitely won't see it on Zillow.
Yeah.
But you won't see it either on Realtor.com, Homes.com.
Yeah.
Now, on Redfin now, you will see the Compass coming soons, which are the private listing
Okay.
network listings, because Redfin and Compass signed some sort of agreement. I don't know the exact details. But yeah, as of March, I think it was the end of March, all of our private listing network listings are on Redfin, not on Zillow. Yeah.
For somebody that's not in the industry,
Mm-hmm.
why would somebody want to do a private listing?
Yeah, so there's a lot of reasons. They're not the seller might not be ready. You don't have to necessarily show when you're in the private. And then you can kind of test out the market a little bit with the pricing. I know there are two schools of thought on that. Some agents disagree on that thought process. But I really like it for my clients because we can figure out and hone in, because we can do what's called reverse prospecting. So we put in a price and then we can see like how many buyers are in that price pocket, and then determine based upon the amount of calls and inquiries that we're getting, okay, are we priced right? Or are we way too high? Are we even too low? Were we too conservative, you know?
Yeah.
And then we can adjust, we can pivot, we can still be doing the work, improving the house, getting it ready before fully activating, and then we accrue 0 days on market. So that's why I like the private listing. That's why a lot of my clients like the private listing network.
Yeah. And
There's really no risk.
Is it a specific demographic, like as far as
Really?
like
Yeah.
price
Price
point?
range?
Yeah.
Not really. No.
Really? Okay.
I mean,
so there's lower price that you've done private listings.
Oh
Okay.
yeah, there's lower prices. I mean, condos starting from 100, 200,000 all the way up to, well over 2 million. Yeah.
Wow.
So
Okay. One of the arguments that Lyracy mentioned was, sorry, Matt, we're talking about you, but it's kind of in front of you, but like also behind the coattails. We tried talking about that before. I don't know,
Yes.
whatever you're going to call
riding
it.
on the coattails.
Yeah,
Yes,
right on the
yeah.
coattails of the event. So he would explain it. He was explaining it that, like, let's say you have a relo client,
Yeah.
and they weren't working with an agent in the different state. They wouldn't have access to that private listing necessarily.
Yeah. So
that's where
meaning like
his
he
thought-
was he saying that, okay, so you have a relocation client that's coming into you?
Yeah,
or
like
coming-
he's had it before where he sold a client's property
Here.
in Illinois,
Okay.
right? And they're going to go down to South Carolina,
Yeah.
and he's like, "Are you working with an agent?"
Yeah.
And then, no, we're not, but we're still looking on the mass, like
all the
population.
websites, yeah.
Yeah, all the websites. And he was like, "Okay, well that doesn't help the price." He's like, I can get more demand if I can go out and put it on the active right away. You're missing opportunity for those listings because of the pricing higher because of the fact that they're in the PLN. So did that make sense or?
Kind of. So you're saying that the agents in the out of state price things higher, or he's pricing?
No,
their,
it's just
their
they
current
don't
home
have
rent?
access to the listings. So
Okay.
like he could create a demand of people coming into when it's active. You know, like a different price. You know what I'm saying? Like a
Oh, I
different price
see.
point. So
I see. Okay. I guess.
it takes away. It takes away people that are relocating or people that don't see it that aren't working with an agent.
That aren't working with an
You could get
agent.
more demand based on the.
I see.
And more price out of it. I guess
Yeah.
out of the house.
Out of the house.
price,
Yeah. I guess so. I mean, that is a value. I would say that is a valid argument, you know? But the other thing to consider is you hear about all the time in these discussions that like, well, you know, maximum exposure, that's best, right? Why would you want anything less than that? But the thing to keep in mind is maximum exposure is not always the right exposure, because just because you're marketing to the masses doesn't mean that everybody in that mass is qualified and ready to go and actively in the market. No. You want to market it to the right people, right?
Right.
And so that's what I think the slight difference is in the way that, like, my personal opinion.
Yeah.
It's not always about the maximum exposure, but I would counter argue a little bit on Matt's kind of point is that like his network is so large, okay, as I'm sure you know mine is, and his is even greater, that he should not have any issues with getting the right exposure, even when, you know, he doesn't use the private listing network, right? But it's up to his seller. It's honestly up to his seller. If his seller doesn't want to put the listing in the PLN, then don't, you know. But I think that his network is so strong that I would challenge him. I don't know if there would be a difference in the amount of exposure and the price that he would get. You know, like if we did a little experiment,
Yeah.
and he put one in the PLN and one not, by virtue of using his network on the one that he did not put into the PLN,
Right.
I think he could get about the same result. Honestly, yeah.
okay.
Because at the end of the day, I think it's about the agent too. I don't think. I mean, we're talking about websites and the PLN and various brokerages, and at the end of the day, fundamentally, it's about the agent. It's about the individual agent, what they're capable of doing, how wide their network is, and their skill set.
Right. That leads me to Tommy Cho. One of the best things that I heard out of that event was what the whole purpose of this was to gain attention, right? Mm-hmm. And the attention that you're getting now has to be your brand.
Yes.
So like,
yes.
if, you know, he used an example of Nike, and you know, because he's a big shoe guy, right?
Yeah,
so
yeah.
If Nike was throwing an event, you would know what to expect.
You would
for shoes, right?
Yes,
but if
yes.
Hyatt was trying to do that same event, which is kind of a Zillow, right?
Yeah,
like
yeah. You don't know what to expect.
Yeah, you don't know.
The other thing and kind of going back to what Matt said originally about the empires, right? And like the big companies. And honestly, that's what we thought of Zillow. That's what I thought. Not we as in Compass, but me, Alice Chin, thought of Zillow as an empire that grew so large, you know, and kind of took over. And so what I think we would like to happen as an industry, because it would benefit the clients, it would benefit us, etc., is that kind of like what happened to streaming services. So do you remember, like, in the beginning, there was like just one streaming service?
Yeah.
Netflix, probably,
Right.
right? Okay. And then there was, started adding on more, right? So then there's Prime now, right? There's Apple, there's Disney Plus, there's
so many.
I mean, there's Hulu. There's so many now, right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of where I think the industry is going to go. Like, so instead of going to Zillow, which is not even a brokerage, okay, for real estate, right? Yeah. Is it annoying for the consumer? Yeah. You know, it's a little bit annoying, but I mean, if they don't see what they want to see on this site, then they just go to a different portal. So then they go to Compass.com. They can go to, Berkshire Hathaway. They can go to Keller Williams. Whatever, and then there might be different inventory on each one, just like there's different movies and different shows on each streaming platform.
Yeah.
Right. Then there's competition. So going back around full circle, like not an empire, then there's competition vying for the eyeballs.
Right.
That's what I think. Yeah.
Wow. That's interesting. So the things I think about when you brought that up were, okay, so when you have the NAR thing, right, where you have to sign
the buyer rep. Yeah.
Is that going to be part of that, where when you get access to my listings, is there going to be a commitment needed or a fee?
Yeah.
Like kind of, because you made a great point of streaming services.
Streaming
right?
services.
That's one of my biggest issues. And
you're like, well, it's not on here, but it's on here. But
I cancel my cable, and now all of a sudden I have to go to all these streaming services. I'm paying about the same if I go to all these different.
Yeah.
So what's going to happen? What's the future of this?
Yeah, I don't know. That's a good question. I mean, I think that it's just going to be hopefully healthy competition, and there's probably going to be 4 or 5, maybe more websites that as a consumer you go to make sure that you're not missing anything, right?
Right.
Hopefully you're working with a seasoned professional agent that can get you access to the MLS direct feed, right? And then they can also give you access to the PLN, and then any pocket listings that their office or they may have. So is it fair? No. I mean, there's some listings I'm sure that certain agents like Matt have in-house that I'm sure he shares with his clients first. That's fine. That's his prerogative, But I just think that that's a selling point. That's a differentiating factor, right? So honestly, when I meet with potential buyers, that's what I say to them, that I don't promise anything, but I potentially could have access to certain things. Like if I take a listing and it's a match for you, well, of course you're going to know about it first.
Right.
If you sign with me, of course, But again, there's no guarantee, that I'll have something that matches.
Right. Right.
And then the whole thing with us wanting to double end, I wanted to talk about that just a little bit more, about us wanting to double end things or keep it in-house. First of all, that's such a blanket statement because, and I'm kind of offended by that personally, because my team and me as a policy, we do not perform dual agency. Yeah. So that argument in and of itself is already like strange, if that makes sense. It doesn't apply to me.
Right.
And so it's kind of like, well, Alice, you like Compass private exclusives because you just want to keep things in-house and double end things. Well, that argument doesn't really hold any water when we don't, as a matter of policy, perform dual agency.
Yeah.
So, that doesn't even make sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think so for the layman folk out there that aren't in the industry, dual ending and dual agency is what?
When one agent represents both the buyer and the seller in the same transaction.
Yeah. So like I would say that a consumer would think that that's okay. Like, why isn't that okay?
No. Yeah. So when we explain it to our clients, they're like, "Oh no, we don't want that," and we're okay with that. Wow. And so then we just say, we mark no on the form.
Yeah.
We think it's a conflict of interest for sure. Not all states allow dual agency, actually.
Really?
It's not legal in all states. Okay. Yeah. And so we say no. We just say we're not going to do that because when you sign with us, you have committed to us and we are committing to you.
Yeah.
And so for us to have a buyer, for example, like if we sign with the seller, for a buyer to come in and say, oh, we like this house. And then we just say, oh, we're going to switch sides and we're going to switch teams now, or we're going to pretend to be the referee between the teams. Like that's not right.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, that's just a lot.
That's a lot.
A lot to understand. I mean,
and digest. Yeah.
And it's just, ultimately when you zoom out from this, then I think this is what their argument was your focus should be on the consumer.
Focus should be on the client.
And,
yeah.
in their best
100%.
interest. And that's
Yes.
what you're saying.
Yeah.
But there's all this red tape that's in between that with
Correct.
the Zillows and the Redfins and all these mass, websites that people think that you can just go find any listing. And
Yes.
It's just not the case.
It's not the case. Yeah.
So what's the best step? So if anybody wanted to start looking today after this news, what would you recommend to a consumer?
It would be really hard. I mean, they could still do it without an agent. They could go to open houses, etc. But that I feel like they would be almost a couple steps behind because of private listing network and all that, and pocket listing. So I think the first step is they should get pre-approved. They should talk to a lender for sure. And then they need to start interviewing, just like sellers have always interviewed agents, right? As to who's going to represent them in the sale of their home. Buyers, we have also noticed they should start interviewing agents in the same fashion. So they should line up interviews or meetings with several. 3 is a good number. And then ask them a list of the same questions, right? Not only what their fee is, how they work, what is their team structure, if they have a team, how are they set up, right? Do they have access to an in-house, pocket listing system? What are their points of differentiation? Do they typically work with buyers or sellers or half and half? So there's usually a host of questions. So I think what we're going to start seeing in the industry is that kind of shift. So before, when buyers weren't required to sign anything, right? They just kind of just went with whoever picked up the phone and was willing to show them a house. Now I think it's going to get towards more and more of a formalized process where they interview agents and kind of go through the same thing as sellers do.
Yeah.
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 And then that way, that'll be the best for them, because once they decide who they like and want to work with, then that agent for sure will set them up on a search and be actively searching for them.
Yeah. So that opens the door to your listings, and even the private listing network. That's the big selling point. I feel like that there's a balance right now where the agents are trying to protect their livelihood with this Zillow.
No, I totally agree.
And so
I totally agree. Yeah.
That's one of those things where it's always been, you guys have been just going through the ringer in the last 3 or 4 years.
Or not even I would say the last 2 years. Yeah,
2 years. Yeah. It's been one thing after the next. After
it really
the next,
has.
Right?
Yeah.
So,
and it's no, don't go that way. Come this way. Okay, go this way. No.
But for me, I think something like this goes, okay, now the real players are going to surface.
Exactly.
And your level of service is going to
increase for sure. Yeah, because then no more. I think what's going to start going away, I hope, is the pay to play on Zillow.
That's what I've never been one of those people to. I've done lead gen before.
Oh yeah,
It's worked.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it's like, let's get really. I like the art of the hunt.
The art of the hunt.
Like really get out there, the process, and going out and grinding and doing what you have to do to really make a good living. You know?
True.
So, and that's what you do.
That's what we do. Yeah.
So, well, man, this was a good one. We
That's
could
a
probably
loaded
go
one.
on forever
We could.
with this particular topic, and I think that's one of the things where we'll probably talk about this more throughout
I'm
the
sure
year.
we will. Yes.
So, with that being said, we'll see you on the next episode of the Alice Chin Podcast.
See you next time.